India is a plural country. It has so many diversities. Most of these diversities are based upon religion. In other words, religion creates not only different groups but also led to social exclusion of some of these groups. Here comes the question of minorities. Even after implementing our constitution for more than 50 years, we are still having problems related to minorities and their socio-economic position. Some of the minority groups are not able to participate in the development of our country. Even today, we come across communalism and also communal clashes all over the country. Some communities, on the basis of the religious faith which they subscribe, we are coming across social exclusion. This clearly provides an opportunity for any sociologists to study what this minority is, why they are backward, what must be the reason for their vulnerability. Many sociologists try to understand these questions. To name a few, 𝗵𝗏𝗏, 𝗵𝗵𝗸 Mandelbaum, 𝗧𝗦𝗔𝗧, Das-Gupta, all these persons try to understand the social, economic, religious and political position of minorities of our country. Here comes need to define what is meant by minority status, who are they or whom we consider as minorities, what type of rights are provided for them under the Constitution of India, what is their position, whether social or economic or political, in our present day society, what type of schemes we have taken up for the benefit of these minority groups so that they can participate in the mainstream. Let's start with who are minority groups. Our constitution has not defined who are the minority or minority groups, but the same constitution under articles 25 to 30 provides certain cultural and religious rights to people. These articles provide a right to certain groups to teach their children at least a primary level education in their own mother tongue, or in other words we can call it as linguistic minority status. It also talks about the right to subscribe any religion and follow a religious faith. It is a kind of right to religion, but because of this right to religion, we have many religious groups. Supreme Court of India also tried to describe the status of minority and who are minorities in a plethora of cases. The first case which talked about linguistic minority status is Pankajam Dorairajan versus Union of India case. Though it is related to whether certain seats can be earmarked for a particular group or not, there we come across Supreme Court of India talking about minority majority situation in our country. If we take the present day situation, we usually consider 5 different groups as minority groups. These include Muslims, Christians, Sikhs, Buddhists and Zoroastrians. Buddhists as per law are considered as part of Hindus, but they are having their own specific cultural aspects and they consider themselves as a diverse group other than Hindus. Hence, in practice, Buddhists also are to some extent excluded. Zoroastrians though their population is very, very small, we usually call them as Parsis. They are considered as very good business people, and their culture also is different from our Indian cultural systems, and in some cases they are still continuing their specific homogeneous cultural norms in our country. This creates a kind of diversity. When we talk about minorities, though we cannot say that they are excluded just like scheduled castes or scheduled tribes or other backward classes or social exclusion on the basis of gender, but still they are either not allowed to participate in various activities of public participation by others, or they themselves are not participating in various activities. This peculiar situation creates a need to study about minorities and their situation. When we talk about minorities, we usually see the historicity of minority groups or how different minority groups emerge in our country during the course of time. We also see the present day socio-economic status of these groups. We throw a light upon various schemes which we have taken up in order to improve the position of these minority groups, and we also try to understand and analyze and comprehend what is happening in our present day society, how best we can bring all these groups into the major stream or mainstream. The reason is because of these diversities, because of the minority groups, democracy is facing certain problems like communal politics or communalism or linguism or casteism. Let us discuss this topic on the basis of different groups. Let me start with the historical aspects of various minority groups in our country. Let's start with Muslims. When we talk about Muslims, we usually start with 6th century AD. Presently, Muslims can be divided on the basis of historicity of that particular community into 3 major groups. One group who came to our country somewhere around 6th century AD, who was subscribing Islamic religion and still continue to subscribe the same religious faith in our country even today. Second group includes particularly people who invaded our country during 11th century, or we call this period as Sultanate, who tried to politically dominate us, establish their empires here. During this period, many non-Muslims also converted themselves into Christianity, either forcibly or voluntarily. Third category, which we usually come across when we talk about Muslim minority population, is people particularly from lower classes and lower castes, in order to escape from the serious do's and don'ts or prohibitions and prescriptions imposed upon them by the Hindu society, converted themselves into Islamic faith, or people who converted themselves into Islamic faith in order to gain politically or administratively. So these are the 3 aspects which provide the basis for, particularly historical basis for, Islamic group in our country. When we see the population of different religious groups in our country, Hindus occupy the first place, next Muslims, thirdly Christians, Buddhists and Jains fourthly, Zoroastrians fifthly, and other religions, tribal religions, occupy the 6th place. Not only that, When we see Islamic population all over the world, nearly third place is of our countries. Then how many schools of thought we are having in our country related to Muslims? What are they? Do we have all sub branches of people who subscribe Islamic faith in our country? If yes, what are they? Or do we have only two major branches? Let us see these aspects. In our country, we come across two major subsects of people who subscribe Islamic faith, Sunnis and Shias. Muslims in India are not a monolithic community. Different racial characteristics, cultural norms or social systems we come across among the Muslims. Not only that, they are not outside the caste system. Technically, Islamic faith will not accept any caste system, but in practice, Muslims, if they belong to, prior to conversion, to an untouchable caste or lower caste, still this caste discrimination is being continued even after the conversion into Islam. Many a times, particularly in villages, people who convert themselves into Islam, if they belong to scheduled caste or untouchable caste, they are allowed to go to a mosque or prayer place for performing prayer, but in all other aspects, they are considered as untouchables only. Not only that, on the basis of economic, educational and cultural backwardness, we come across most of the Muslim community people are suffering with various disabilities, or they are backward compared to many other Muslims as well as non-Muslims. If we take up various aspects of laws applicable to Muslims, we come across different schools. For instance, Hanafi school is one such school. We also come across Malik school. Specific reason-wise schools of thought also we come across. Say for instance, 𝗹𝗶𝗆 Muslims of Kerala follow a particular school. Though Quran is a major source of law for any Muslim, different interpretations are termed as schools. To which Islamic group you belong to, accordingly which school you are following will be determined. We have specific schools of thought, on that basis specific communities, like we have Mughals and Pathans, we have Sheikhs, we have Bohra Muslims, Mapla Muslims. These are some of the subsects of Islamic faith which we are having in our country. When we consider other minority groups, let us see how historically they are in our country. Let's start with Buddhists. Even among the Buddhists also, historically, we can come across three major groups. Buddhists who followed Buddhism and still following Buddhism even today. Second group of Buddhists include people who converted themselves into Buddhism. They are termed as Neo-Buddhists. Third category of Buddhists include various tribal communities who converted themselves into Buddhistic philosophy. Among the Christians also, we come across three categories. Anglo-Indians, who has become a separate community because of the amalgamation of Europeans and Indians. Second one is because of the evangelism and various activities taken up by the European colonialists, converted themselves into Christianity. Third one is converted Christians from higher and upper castes who were converted because of various values which attracted them towards Christianity and still continuing as Christians. Among the Sikhs also we come across two major groups. People who subscribed Sikhism, particularly from upper caste, they are usually called as Sardars, and people who subscribed Sikhism from lower castes. In other words, in our country, though religious faith is different, it is linked with caste or when and how they were converted into a non-Hindu religious group. In all these, what we come across is most of the conversions occurred because of the hegemonic or oppressive policies of Hindu upper caste situation or upper caste system. People converted themselves into other religions because they were not able to cope with the oppression imposed upon them by upper caste people, whether they converted themselves into Islam or Christianity or Buddhism or Sikhism. In all these cases, we see upper caste oppression over the lower caste, and in order to avoid that oppression, people converting themselves into other religious faiths. But this is not so in case of Zoroastrianism, because Zoroastrians are migrants. When there occurred different situations, warlike situations in Iran, many people left their place and migrated to our country. These people are fire god worshippers, or they follow in 𝗂𝗍𝗧. We are calling them as Zoroastrians. And these people, first they reached Kutch area or the present day Gujarat state. The then king of Kutch area gave asylum to these people, and they have established their spatial as well as socio-cultural systems there. This group is entirely different. It is a very homogeneous community, and people cannot convert themselves into Zoroastrianism. Because of their less population and their social status, we consider them as a minority group. In our country, second largest religious group is that of the Muslims. But at the same time, we usually consider, whenever we talk about communalism or communal clashes, we come across clashes between Muslims and Hindus, Muslims and Christians. Why it is happening like that? Why Muslims are feeling that they are estranged people, they are excluded people? What must be the reason? Let us have a look about their socio-economic status. When we talk about economic status of the major religious community next to Hindus, that is Muslims, we come across most of the Muslim people are not having economic prosperity. Many of them are having low paid or low income generating occupations. We also come across other situation, that is, most of the Muslims are educationally also are not forward, mostly they are backward. When we talk about other aspects, particularly social status and all that, we come across a strong panchayat system among the Muslims. In rural areas, Muslims also are part and parcel of 𝗳𝗏 system, or the traditional goods and services exchange system, which is based upon various cultural norms. We come across even in villages, most of the Muslims and their socio-economic status is on par with lower caste people. We consider Muslims as people not allowing us to introduce certain ideas like developmental aspects and all that. Non-Muslims and Muslims, they are having some kind of gap amongst them. It can be considered as a psychological gap. Many a times we are socialized to consider Muslims as the outsiders, or we have in sociology words like we group and they group, in group and out group. Many times people from villages as well as in some areas, Muslims are considered as they group. Some of the states of our country are having majority of their population as Muslims. We can take an example of Jammu and Kashmir and Uttar Pradesh. All of us are well aware, even today Jammu and Kashmir is having some problem. Even today we come across a kind of fundamentalistic attitudes in these states or union territories. Even today we come across how Muslim boards or Muslim traditional panchayats are trying to say no for certain aspects. Why it is happening like that? Let's see how and why it is. Here we have to talk about legislations, various schemes which are aimed to improve the position of people who subscribe Islam. Let me start with a case, very famous case, Shah Banu case. You might have heard about Shah Banu's case, which resulted in the enactment of Muslim Women Protection of Right of Divorce Act. Article 44 of the Constitution of India talks about Uniform Civil Code. Supreme Court as well as Constitution opined that a uniform criminal code is there. Similarly, uniform civil code also should be there for the country. That is the reason the Constituent Assembly Drafting Committee included Article 14 into the Directive Principles of State Policy. Shah Banu case is a landmark case because it reiterated the need for having uniform civil code. Various aspects of one's family life, whether that is succession of property or marriage or adoption or guardianship, all these are determined by, ruled by personal laws in our country. If you are a Hindu, then Hindu law is applicable to you. If you are a Muslim, then Islamic law is applicable to you. Similarly, if you are a Christian, Indian Divorce Act or Christian principles are applicable to you. So like this we have different personal laws. When we have different personal laws, obviously it creates diversities in our society. And sometimes these diversities may create exclusion not only on the basis of religion but also on the basis of other aspects. For instance, women, whether she can have a right to divorce her husband or not, it depends upon personal law. If her husband divorces her, can she claim for any maintenance or not? Even that also is linked with personal law. Whether we can adopt a child or not, that is linked with personal law. Whether we can have property, inherit property, if that property is ancestral property or not, even that also is linked with personal law. In all these aspects, we come across differences, divergences on the basis of to which religion we belong to. When we have these diversities, no country can have single procedure. In order to establish single procedure, we wanted to have uniform civil code. But Muslims are thinking that having uniform civil code is nothing but following whatever Hindu law or Hindu jurisprudence says so. Starting from 1970 decade onwards, even today, uniform civil code has become a bone of contention. Even presently also, Muslim Personal Law Board is trying to say no for certain changes. It is not accepting. Sharia law has created some contracts, particularly for the purposes of marriage, because marriage is a part and parcel of domestic life where personal law applies. Some of the feminists are not accepting certain provisions of Sharia law related to marriage. So these situations create a kind of exclusion on the basis of gender, on the basis of religion, and also on the basis of class and caste. Have we taken any intervention in this? Yes, our answer is an affirmative. Our government has started various programs for the benefit of people who subscribe Islam, particularly Muslims, because most of the Muslims are from lower economic classes, educationally backward, and they are also economically backward. Let us see what these programs are. Article 25 to 30 of Constitution of India contains provision for protection of the interest of minorities and allows them to have a distinct language or culture or to conserve the same. A 15-point program is being implemented in order to have effective measures for bettering the socio-economic conditions of minorities since 1990-1993. A National Minorities Development and Finance Corporation has been set up by the central government. The Government of India, especially the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, brought the Waqf Act 1995 for protecting the properties recognized by Muslim law. The Government of India, through its Dargah Khwaja Sahib Act of 1955, is protecting the Dargah of Hazrat Khwaja Mohinuddin Chishti at Ajmer. Maulana Azad Education Foundation has been set up as a society with the objective of promoting education among the educationally backward part of society, minority in particular and others in general. The National Commission for Minorities Act 1992 has been passed by the Parliament. Under this act, the National Commission for Minorities was constituted. According to Article 350A and 353B, instruction in mother tongue at primary stage of education to children belonging to minority communities and appointment of several officers for linguistic minorities can be established. Another minority group which we come across in our country are the Buddhists. When we consider the Buddhists, we come across three different types of groups, subgroups. One is people who subscribed Buddhist philosophy and continuing. Second one is during the last quarters of our freedom struggle, because of the yeomanship of Dr. Baba Sahib Ambedkar, converted themselves into Buddhism. And thirdly, people who convert themselves into Buddhism in order to question various hegemonic aspects of the present day religious system, whether it is Islam or Hinduism or any other religion. Traditionally, we see two subsets of Buddhists, Mahayana Buddhism and Hinayana Buddhism. Presently, we have two types of groups among the Buddhists. Buddhism never believes in fourfold system of Varna like Hindus believe. These two types are Gruhapatis and common people. Upper caste people who converted themselves into Buddhism are termed as Gruhapatis, and other people from downtrodden castes or agricultural laborers or lower castes who converted themselves into Buddhism are the second tier or second class. Buddhism was very important, particularly when Baba Sahib Ambedkar, questioning Hinduism and its oppression, converted himself into Buddhism and also asked many people to convert themselves into Buddhism. When Baba Sahib Ambedkar converted himself into Buddhism, more than 4 lakh people converted themselves into Buddhism, it seems. One point we have to remember in this context is Many people who converted themselves into Buddhism converted because they were questioning the oppression within Hinduism. Hence, we come across people from lower castes, agricultural laborers, landless agricultural laborers, or small peasants or untouchables, and people who were excluded by the Hindu groups as converts into Buddhism. They will not accept any type of oppression. Socially, Buddhists are one group, but because of their prior to conversion socio-economic position, even today we come across among the Buddhists, many people are economically, educationally backward. Not only that, conversion to Buddhism will not change their socio-economic position in the places wherever they are residing. Though they have converted themselves into Buddhism, still they are excluded because of their economic position or because of their socio-cultural position. This creates a need for us to understand the importance of Buddhism and also the role of Buddhism in enhancing the position of people. We can clearly say that though conversion is there, because of the lower socio-economic position, not much benefit they could attain. In other words, they are still excluded people. But one thing one has to accept, presently we are having many people converting themselves into Buddhism. Legally speaking, Hindu personal law is applicable to all Buddhists and Jains. In other words, law will not recognize Buddhists and Jains as separate communities than Hindus. This is because of, once again, historical aspect. When Hinduism was questioned, a revivalistic movement was started. Buddhism as well as Jainism are such revivalistic tendencies. They have originated from Shramanic tradition, which was prevalent, which was very popular among the Hindus. We never come across any fundamentalism among the Buddhists. They are mostly peace lovers. But we come across a kind of downtroddenness or exclusion, particularly when tribal communities converted themselves into Buddhism. Still they are facing so many problems. These problems are linked with their rights over the forest or their rights over indigenous occupations or their inability to participate various political decision-making processes. Buddhists in India were a two-tier structure and not the conventional four-fold Varna system. In the upper type were placed the Brahmins, Kshatriyas and certain categories of Gurukhapatis, and in the lower tier were tribal and other marginal groups. The divisions of Buddhists into the Mahayana and Hinayana were based on doctrinal difference and do not represent a gradation in society. Another religious minority community in our country belongs to the Christians. We come across many Christians from different castes and communities. For instance, in some of the states we are having Brahmin Christians and Kshatriya Christians. Because of the evangelism, because of the work of various Christian missionaries, many tribal communities as well as downtrodden castes converted themselves into Christianity. Two major groups of Christians we come across in our country. These are Roman Catholics and Protestants. When we see the socio-economic position of the Christians, it is not that good compared to various other communities. The reason is same like any other religious minority group. Many people because of their low socio-economic position, converted themselves into various other religious groups in order to better their position. Even Christianity also is one such escape route. Unfortunately, conversion into Christianity in some cases probably might have brought some change, but not in all cases. Even today, many people are suffering with exclusion. In many regions, converted people, particularly from lower castes or untouchable castes, are having separate prayer places and also cemeteries. This itself shows that persons who try to escape from caste and caste oppression could not do by converting themselves into Christianity. Even today, many people who subscribe Christian faith are still educationally, economically backward. Our government has taken various measures to improve the position of even the Christians. Another minority group include the Sikhs. Sikhism is a kind of revivalistic movement against the traditional oppressive religions. But among the Sikhs also we come across two major groups: converted Sikhs from upper castes and people who converted themselves into Sikhism from lower castes. Even today we can say caste-based exclusion and discrimination among the Sikhs. Sikhs have 5 major aspects. They strictly follow Adi Granth. In fact, Sikhism is nearly 400 years old in our country. Gurumukhi script is very, very important. In this context we have to. But Sikhs are, though they study Gurumukhi, that is only linked with religious purposes. In otherwise, they have to study English or any other regional language in order to equip themselves for the present day economic situations. Here once again they are facing some problem. If their economic position is very low, just like any other lower class person, even Sikhs also are not able to get enough opportunities in order to better their life. Another group which we consider as minority group is that of the Zoroastrians. Zoroastrians are situated in only few states of our country. Some of them are very successful business people, but slowly their population is going down. This is because of the stringent panchayat system prevalent among the Zoroastrians. When we see the position of all these minorities groups, Muslims, Christians, Sikhs or Buddhists or Zoroastrians, we come across certain common problems faced by these people. These problems include problems of communal violence, problems related to socio-economic position where they are not able to get enough opportunities in order to better equip themselves. Thirdly, a kind of cultural estrangement or cultural exclusion where they are not believed. This is mostly in case of Muslims. Fourthly, a kind of fundamentalistic attitude under which each religious minority community prefers to continue their own cultural norms, though they are not in tune with equality provisions or equal justice and welfare state provisions. In order to reduce social exclusion on the basis of minority status, our articles 25 to 30 created right to cultural and religious rights for each and every citizen without giving any importance or any significance to caste, class, creed or race or any division. These rights are available to all citizens of our country, but still we are having some kind of political upheavals because of the religious minorities. We also experiencing certain situations where fundamentalism is ruling the day. Each minority group thinks that they are belittled or looked down upon or not given enough chances. A smallest incident may trigger violent attitudes. Umpteen number of examples we have experienced in our country where one religious community was obviously oppressed by either religious community, and most of these religious violent activities caused harm to both person as well as property. Let us have a look on what type of intervention strategies we are following in order to mitigate social exclusion on the basis of minority status of a particular group. We have already mentioned 15 points program. Besides that, our government, both central as well as state governments, have taken up many measures to improve the socio-economic position of minorities. Articles 29 and 30 of the Constitution provide protection to the linguistic, educational and cultural rights of the minorities. Article 29 states that any community in India is entitled to have and preserve its own specific language, script or culture. Article 30 declares that all minorities in India are having constitutional right to establish and run their own educational institutions. It also states that the state, while giving grants, shall not discriminate against any institution just because it belongs to a linguistic or religious minority. Articles 331 and 333 also make provisions to give protection to the interests of the Anglo-Indian communities. Special provision relating to language spoken by a section of the population of a state. Article 347, language to be used in representations for redress of grievances. Article 350, facilities for instruction in mother tongue at primary stage. Article 350A. National Commission for Religious and Linguistic Minorities, a statutory body set up under the National Commission Act 1992 to investigate into the matters referred to them for betterment of minorities. The Commission has the following functions: evaluate the progress of the development of minorities under the Union and states, monitor the working of the safeguards provided in the Constitution and in laws enacted by Parliament and the state legislatures. Prime Minister's 15-point program, a central government program for the welfare of minorities. Equitable availability of the integrated child development services, improving access to school education, greater resources for teaching Urdu, modernizing madrasa education, scholarships for meritorious students from minority communities, improving educational infrastructure through the Maulana Azad Foundation, self-employment and wage employment for the poor, upgradation of skill through technical training, enhanced credit support for economic activities, recruitment to state and central services, equitable share in rural housing scheme, improvement in condition of slums inhabited by minority communities, prevention of communal incidents, prosecution for communal offences, rehabilitation of victims of communal rights. Whenever we prepare for any competitive examinations, we expect questions on the topic of minority groups in India. we usually consider various aspects of minority groups for the purposes of examination, mainly how historically minority groups emerged, what is the diversity of different minority groups. For instance, Hanafi school is applicable to which sect of Muslims? A question may be given. Or a question may be on where do you find Bohra Muslims? Or they may also ask who population is more in case of Shias or Sunnis. Or they may also ask, are there any differences between Hanafi school or Malik school or cultural norms of Sunnis and Shias with reference to their family, marriage, succession of property, etc. This is one major part. Secondly, what type of problems minorities are facing? Are the problems of Muslims, Christians, Buddhists and Sikhs are same or different? How come Urdu language is not given importance though it is linked with Islamic faith? Why Gurumukhi language is not introduced in all states? Another chunk which we have to study thoroughly is what are the intervention strategies linked with minority groups? What type of movements occurred in our country? Or sometimes some acronyms will be given, a full form of that also is to be noted down. For instance, triple talaq, nowadays we are talking about this aspect. This is directly linked with a particular minority group based upon current affairs. What is happening? What is the meaning of talaq or what is the meaning of triple talaq, significance of it? What is the role of Muslim Personal Law Board? Why when Law Commission has given a questionnaire, Muslim Personal Law Board refused to answer some questions? What must be the reason? On these grounds also some questions may be given. What type of provisions are there exclusively for Anglo-Indian communities? Are they different from or their position is different from other Christians? What is the position of Dalit Christians? Can they claim any privileges under the constitution other than right to religion? Some questions you may expect. What is the main significance of Buddhism in our country? How the present day situation of tribal Buddhists and non-tribal Buddhists is comparable? What is the role of Dalai Lama playing, particularly in areas where many Buddhists are? Some questions you may expect. We may also expect questions on different enactments as well as schemes. For instance, minority commissions, when it was started, how it is constituted, who is the present chairperson for Minorities Commission, whether this minority commission takes up activities related to all minority groups or only one minority group, what is the significance of different acts enacted upon, how much outlay is earmarked for the benefit of minority groups by different states as well as the central government. Is there any specific reason for taking up certain issues related to minority communities and their socio-economic position? So like that, we will be preparing for our examination on the historicity of minority groups, diversity of minority groups, how this diversity is either creating some opportunities or creating some loss to the entire democracy, what type of intervention strategies we have adopted and how many types of intervention strategies are working now and their nature of working, and the need for new innovative intervention strategies in order to better equip minority communities and bring them into the mainstream. The whole and sole aim of any welfare state would be bringing each and every person into the mainstream so that developmental benefits will be available to each and every person. In other words, minorities should not be excluded. That is the motto of any welfare state. Let us hope for this idealistic situation in our country.